I work with a lot of educators who prefer joining sessions with cameras off, and I want to honor their preference. What other suggestions or practices have you seen for active remote chat engagement? So specifically looking at how do we do fun, cool, engaging things in chat specifically without having to rely on video?
Absolutely. I especially working in education, a lot of educators just tired and they don't want to feel like they have to put on a performance or prepare just to take part in a training or a session as
Mhm.
they get ready for the upcoming year. I want to make sure that I honor and respect that.
Yeah.
But I also recognize too that as comfortable as I can be with waiting out for somebody to be brave enough to come in on microphone, and I'm good at like accepting those awkward pauses. They're fine for
Mhm.
me. It doesn't, rolls off my shoulders. But
Yeah, yeah.
I can recognize that like nobody wants to be that first person to really offer something up. And so
Right.
I recognize that, chat is often very underutilized as a
Mhm.
tool for engagement. It's
Mhm.
often seen as like it's there for people who want it, but
Mhm.
you can respond to that very efficiently and effectively and allow people to feel seen and
Mhm.
involved.
Mhm. Absolutely. How many people do you tend to have in those situations?
Boy, it's a
Wide?
variety. It varies
Mhm.
from anywhere. I mean, if it's 2 or 3 people, they're gonna be involved, like, they feel like they're a part of it, but I've had
Mhm.
sessions of 500 people, and I
Mhm.
wanna make sure that they're engaged and involved. I don't have to see everybody, but I just wanna
Mhm.
make sure that there's a good enough proportion that more people feel like
Mhm.
they could speak up and they could participate without feeling drowned out.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Okay, couple thoughts. One is that if you want, I think that the chat is awesome. I am intimidated by thinking around how to recreate chat in person because I've come to rely on it so much, and I think it's so valuable. I've actually thought about going back to in-person programs and like just getting a personal whiteboard for each person so they can write their thing and hold it up so I can see it. I'm trying to think about how do I do this because it's so awesome. And I love the chat, and in scaling intimacy, we utilize it a lot. Some people love it. Some people find it distracting and overwhelming. And they're like, it's just too much, especially when you get a lot of people. The chat stream moves really quickly. And they're like, I can't, watch slides or listen to content and watch the chat. So whenever I introduce chat, I would, a couple things. One, I would start with it right off the bat at the beginning of your session, just like we did here, where I just asked you that really quick high and low for the week. So you're setting the tone, A, for engagement, and B, that chat is going to be a significant tool that you want to use. So you're priming people because when they're jumping on the session, they're like, how is this going to work? Like, what are the rules here? What's the culture? What's the vibe? And you're saying, we're going to engage, we're going to contribute, and we're going to do it in the chat. So I would say just start your session off that way to set the tone. And again, chat's always going to be opt-in, right? We're not forcing people to do chat, but we can encourage people to use the chat, right? So thinking about what are the ways in which you're inviting them in and drawing them in and giving them levels of opt-in or levels of disclosure, basically, right? Where it's not a super deep question right off the bat, but we're easing them into that experience. So that's one thing. And then secondly, and then I would also tell people, hey, if the chat's really helpful and you enjoy being in the chat, utilize it. And I'm going to be reading and responding. I think it's important to set up expectations for how the chat's going to be used and how you are going to engage with the chat, right? So here in the beginning, like I was saying, like I'm going to be verbally responding and I invite you all to be commenting, right? So inviting people, I think some people won't necessarily offer, but they will respond to someone else, right? So what is the container? Is it that I've been asked questions and I'd like you to respond in the chat. And if you see someone else's comment, you want to add a +1, you want to add a thumbs up, you want, right? What are the ways in which you can invite them to participate in the chat that might not even be directly with you? One of the huge things that I find, and it sounds simple and stupid, but that really activates people in the chat is using the emojis and the emoticons. And I don't know if any of you have updated your Zoom, but now they have a very robust emoji menu. So when I also, there's like a way to get in your menu if people don't have that. You do on Mac, it's Control Command Spacebar, and on a PC, it's Windows and the period. So you can always activate the menu. But I will tell you, like once I show people that they can use emojis, it's like a party. in this in the chat.
Yeah, that ends
So,
up being the thing that they take away in their feedback. Like
right?
the most important thing I learned, one of
Right.
those,
They love
period.
it. People love
That's the
it.
thing. Oh, okay. All right. I'm glad you
Exactly.
picked something up. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that that shows us is that, you know, everyone has this sense that online is boring and dull. So how do we create opportunities to make it fun and engaging? And emojis are fun. They're fun and playful, and we don't generally associate that with this kind of platform. So I think that's a really good indication. Like, how do I make this fun? How do I make it interactive? How do I make it enjoyable? That's going to really start to light people up. So emojis are another thing I would play with. And then beyond the chat, I don't know to what degree you use polls and things like that, but just thinking about other forms of engagement that are not video. Polls, I think, are huge. I use polls a lot and I find them really helpful. Again, I also think you can have fun with the poll. Word clouds, I don't know if you've used those, but the like Mentimeter is one external application. Quizzes, you can do rank orders. I mean, I think if you get creative, you can do a lot of things that do not rely on video, but I would say continue to try to change it up, because if you're in a 2-hour session and chat is the only form of interaction, you know, anything that we rely on too much is going to get dull and boring for our audience. Even if it's like we're having a dance party, people generally don't want a dance party for 2 hours unless that's specifically what they came for. So that's just something to consider, is like, how can you keep mixing up your forms of engagement that utilize the chat, but that are not just typing in the chat.
I appreciate how you frame that as invite versus expect. I think a lot of times people come in and they're in these sessions not because they, you know, want to be, but because they're told they have to be. And so inviting them in to make it their own and lower that sense of like imposition, I think is very valuable as far as kind of establishing the environment early on. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, awesome. And then I think you probably are familiar with the traditional facilitator adage, like, and if you haven't posted in the chat yet today, we'd love to hear from you. We'd let you know, if you're sitting there feeling nervous about putting something in the chat, this is your moment. Like, your voice matters, your contribution matters, and our community will be richer for your share. So I invite you in this, I'm going to ask this question. And if you're someone who hasn't responded in the chat yet today, I'd love to hear from you. And I think that helps. You know, it really does. I do find that new voices come online, and that if people are used to being passive observers and they feel a little bit nervous, just acknowledging that can be the thing that gets them over the hump of becoming a contributor.